Welcome to the Empowered Meaning Coaching Podcast Series. I'm your host, Louise and Maurice. You know I love hearing from you. So in the comment section, make sure that you're sharing your experience. And if this material is resonating with you, make sure you're giving it a thumbs up and share it with anyone who might benefit from it. Let's continue. Are narcissists confident? What do you think? Well, in this episode 1, this first podcast in the Empowered Meaning Coaching Podcast Series, we are going to look at narcissism and confidence. And we're going to begin with narcissist meaning, what it is, what it isn't. Yes, we'll look at the dictionary definition of narcissism and narcissistic, but we'll look a little bit deeper so that you have a deeper understanding of it. And then we'll look specifically at narcissist and confidence research, that latest research so that you have statistics and findings and understandings that go beyond just the simple. And then narcissist limiting beliefs. What's going on underneath the surface for narcissists and how these limiting beliefs are impacting their success. We'll look deeper at that. And then coaching a narcissist. I'm going to provide you with 5 coaching questions that you can use to coach a narcissist. And I'll give you insight on how to use those questions and what to look for. And then I'll provide you with 5 additional coaching questions, free coaching questions, PDF document that you can download. No email address is required. I'll share with you where to find that on my website. All right. This podcast, remember, you've got your listening ears on, and we'll begin with narcissist meaning. Let's continue. Narcissist meaning. What does narcissism or narcissist mean to you? When you think of the word narcissist, what one word or phrase would you use to describe it? Keep that word in mind as I discuss the dictionary definition of narcissist. The dictionary definition of narcissist from Merriam-Webster Dictionary: extremely self-centered with an exaggerated sense of self-importance. I'll have this link on the PDF document for you. Marked by or characteristic of excessive admiration of or infatuation with oneself. A narcissistic personality develops. Here's a sentence using narcissistic. He was a very narcissistic man with a lack of empathy or concern for others. Now, the Cambridge Dictionary lists the character traits of narcissistic people as being self-centered, focusing on their own needs, desires, and interests, often at the expense of others. Impulsive, acting on their impulses or whims without considering the consequences or risks. Manipulative, using charm, flattery, deception, or coercion to influence or control others. Aggressive, being hostile, violent, or abusive towards others, especially when they feel threatened or challenged. Unreliable, being dishonest, unfaithful, or irresponsible in their commitments or promises. If you're shaking your head and these are some of the one words that you've described and people that you know, then you are very much understanding. Insecure, being overly sensitive, defensive, or paranoid about criticism, rejection, or abandonment. Perfectionist, having unrealistic or rigid standards for themselves or others and being intolerant of flaws or errors. Competitive, striving to win, excel, or outshine others and being envious or resentful of their achievements. Superficial, being concerned with appearance, status, or image, and ignoring or neglecting deeper or more meaningful aspects of life. Unhappy, being dissatisfied, restless, or bored with their life and seeking constant stimulation or excitement. So those are the character traits of narcissistic people as described by the Cambridge Dictionary. Now that you know the dictionary definitions of narcissistic, how close was the dictionary definition to the one word or phrase that you used to describe narcissism or narcissist? Now, this is good information to know. Why? Because it means that you are correct in your assessments. However, be careful not to make assumptions because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for you as you assume everyone is the same or you expect the associations even when there are no viable reasons. Everyone has the times in their life when they might be perfectionist or come across as superficial because they're being concerned with appearance or status or image. It doesn't make them a narcissist. And you always want to be careful with labels. When you give people labels, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for them. All of a sudden, they know what your expectations are of them. And if you're labeling them, especially if they have a personality where they're, oh, you think that I'm like that? Okay, I'm going to prove you. I'm going to prove you right. I'm going to prove you wrong. So you always have to be careful with that. And especially if you are in a professional position, you're a coach, consultant, team lead, or manager, always be careful because people can sense when you are labeling them or assuming that they are a certain type of person. Remember, I'm sharing this with you. We're going over the meaning of narcissistic, the meaning of narcissism, so that you become more understanding. You want to use these assessments as benchmarks only, as a starting place for moving people beyond their limits. Remember, these labels can become their limits. Now, from the dictionary definition of narcissism and narcissistic, I want you to think of people you know who fit the description, especially with those character traits from the Cambridge Dictionary. And as you listen to the research that's coming up next, it's going to help you gain insight and perspective. But before we get to the research, let's look deeper at the meaning of narcissistic, what it is and what it is not, as well as some myths associated with it. What narcissism is. Narcissism is a term that refers to a personality trait or a personality disorder characterized by excessive self-centeredness, self-importance, and lack of empathy for others. People who are narcissistic often have a distorted sense of their own abilities, achievements, and worth, and may seek admiration, validation, and special treatment from others. Narcissism can range from a normal and healthy aspect of personality to a pathological and dysfunctional condition that causes significant impairment and distress. What narcissism is not. There are many myths and misconceptions about narcissism that are not supported by scientific evidence or clinical experience. Some of the most common myths are: myth number 1, all narcissists are extremely self-confident. Well, the reality is that what appears to be narcissistic grandiosity and self-confidence is a thin, defensive facade that is an attempt to cover up deep feelings of insecurity, inadequacy, and shame. Myth 2, all narcissists are master manipulators. Well, the reality is that not all narcissists are skilled at manipulating others and even are aware. They're not aware that the impact of their behavior is having on others. Some narcissists may use manipulation as a way to get what they want, but others may simply act impulsively, selfishly, or aggressively without considering the consequences. Myth 3: all narcissists cheat. Well, the reality is that not all narcissists are unfaithful or promiscuous, and some may even value loyalty and commitment in their relationships. However, some narcissists may cheat because they feel entitled. They might be bored, they might be dissatisfied or insecure, or because they seek novelty, excitement, or validation from others. Myth 4: psychotherapy does not work on narcissists. Well, the reality is that psychotherapy can be effective for some narcissists, especially if they are motivated to change. They have some insight into their problems and they're willing to work on their issues. Myth 5: narcissists are evil people who prey on empathic people in order to ruin their lives. I hear this from coaches all the time. Oh, this client I have is such a narcissist, and they know that I'm an empath, and they just destroy my life. And you might be shaking your head up and down saying, yes, this is exactly what happens to me. Or maybe you manage or lead people and you know that you have people on your team that are like this, and that is their whole purpose, to ruin your life. Well, the reality is that narcissists are not evil or malicious. This isn't an inherent trait that they have, and they are not intentionally trying to harm others. Narcissists are often driven by their own unmet needs. Always remember this. Their own unmet needs. We'll talk about this in the research. Their own unmet needs, fears, and vulnerabilities, and they may act in ways that are self-serving, insensitive, or destructive, but not necessarily with malicious intent. Myth 6: you can't resist a narcissist because they are all incredibly self-confident and sexy, and they're master manipulators. Well, the reality is that not everyone is attracted to or influenced by narcissists, and some people even find them repulsive, arrogant, or annoying. You know when you've met someone who is incredibly annoying and it's self-centered and it's always about them, not necessarily attracted to them. Narcissists may use their charm, flattery, seduction, or persuasion to win over others. If you've been in a sales meeting, you might understand that. But they may also reveal their true colors over time, such as being selfish, demanding, controlling, or abusive. Myth 7: narcissism is caused by either excessive pampering or criticism from parents. Well, the reality is that there is no single or simple cause of narcissism, and it's likely influenced by a complex interaction of genetic, biological, psychological, social, and environmental factors. I want you to think of holistic approach to the development of narcissism, because this holistic approach takes into account all of the different factors. Now, parenting style may play a role in the development of narcissism, but it's not the only one or the most important factors. All right, let's look at narcissism and confidence research. The narcissist and confidence. Well, narcissism and confidence are both related to self-esteem, but they are not the same. Confidence is a healthy level of self-assurance and respect for others, while narcissism is an excessive self-interest and lack of empathy. People who are confident have a realistic and positive view of themselves and their abilities, while people who are narcissistic have a distorted and inflated view of themselves and their importance. Now, we are going to look at the research, but before we continue with that, I want you to just think about the people that you know, the people that you've coached, consulted, the people you lead or manage. Think about the ones who are confident. They have a realistic and positive view of themselves and their abilities. And then the people who are just very distorted and have that inflated view of themselves and their importance. And I want you to think of them side by side. And as we're going through the research, it's going to help you to understand why there are those differences. Because according to some research, people who are narcissistic may have less confidence than people who are not narcissistic because they are more insecure and vulnerable to criticism. Think about some of those times when you've given feedback to a narcissist, how defensive they become. They may also, though, have more confidence than people who are not narcissistic because they are more arrogant and overestimate their abilities. And it depends on how narcissism is measured and what aspects of confidence are considered. For example, one study found that people who scored high on a measure of grandiose narcissism, which involves a sense of superiority and entitlement, had higher self-esteem and self-efficacy than people who scored low on it. Another study found that people who scored high on a measure of vulnerable narcissism, which involves a sense of insecurity and defensiveness, had lower self-esteem and self-efficacy than people who scored low on it. So you've got grandiose narcissism, superiority and entitlement, higher self-esteem, and then you have vulnerable narcissism, which involves a sense of insecurity and defensiveness. They had lower self-esteem and self-efficacy. So it just depends on the type of narcissism. Therefore, the relationship between narcissism and confidence is not straightforward, but rather depends on the type and degree of narcissism as well as the context and situation. We're always talking about that in coaching, context, situation, and being able to understand trigger events, because people who are narcissistic may have more or less confidence than people who are not narcissist, depending on how they cope with their underlying insecurities and how they interact with others. However, confidence that is based on narcissism is not healthy or sustainable, as it can lead to strained relationships and unproductive behaviors. Confidence that is based on self-acceptance and respect for others is more beneficial and fulfilling, as it can foster positive interactions and personal growth. So you want that confidence that's based on self-acceptance and respect for others, because that's more beneficial, fulfilling, and it's more sustainable. So as a coach, consultant, team lead, manager, that's what you're moving people toward. And we'll talk about that as we talk about the coaching session. All right, now there is researchers, they continue to focus on the paradigm that narcissistic tendencies, that is a word that, you'd struggle with that. Try and say it 5 times in a row. Narcissistic. Okay, let's get back to our podcast and the research. They think that narcissistic tendencies are formed in childhood in different ways depending on the environment and the parenting style. All right, so these researchers really are focused on the fact that parenting style, environment, and where they were born, and all of these have different impacts on people. All right, so some possible factors that these researchers take into account are excessive pampering or criticism from parents or caregivers may cause or create unrealistic expectations or low self-esteem in the child. Childhood abuse or trauma, which may damage the child's sense of self and trust in others. Genetic changes or brain abnormalities, which may affect the child's personality and temperament. Unpleasant family life or social interactions, which may make the child feel insecure, rejected, or inferior. Narcissistic tendencies can be healthy or unhealthy, depending on how they affect the person's functioning and relationship. Healthy narcissism involves having a realistic and positive self-image, being confident and assertive, and pursuing one's goals and passions. Unhealthy narcissism involves having a distorted and inflated self-image, being arrogant and entitled, and exploiting or manipulating others for one's own benefit. Narcissistic tendencies can impact people into adulthood in various ways. Some possible outcomes are difficulty in forming and maintaining healthy and satisfying relationships due to lack of empathy, respect, or compromise. Problems in work, school, or financial matters due to unrealistic expectations, poor performance, or conflicts with authority. Vulnerability to depression, anxiety, substance abuse, or suicidal thoughts due to low self-esteem, shame, or isolation, resistance to change or seek help due to denial, defensiveness, or fear of losing control. Remember, all of this research, they're looking into and just what happens, some of the impacts, and following people throughout their life. Some situations that can trigger people when they are narcissistic are not getting what they want or expect, such as special favors, recognition, or admiration, feeling criticized, challenged, or rejected by others, especially those they perceive as inferior or threatening. No one paying attention to them or their achievements, or being overshadowed by someone else's success or popularity. The main fear that people experience when they are narcissistic is that they are ordinary, flawed, or unworthy of love and respect. They may also fear being exposed, humiliated, or abandoned by others. The belief that comes from that fear is that they are superior, unique, and entitled to special treatment. They may also believe that others are envious, hostile, or inferior to them. The feelings they experience are often negative, such as anger, resentment, envy, insecurity, or loneliness. They may also experience positive feelings such as pride, satisfaction, or excitement, but only when they receive validation or admiration from others. The behaviors and defense mechanisms they use as protective measures are grandiosity, exaggerating their achievements, talents, or appearance to boost their self-image and impress others. We heard that from the character traits list from the Cambridge Dictionary, so all of this very much aligned. Behaviors and defense mechanisms they use as protective measures also include fantasy, imagining themselves as successful, powerful, brilliant, beautiful, or ideal to escape from reality or cope with failure. Entitlement, demanding or expecting privileges and special treatment from others without regard for their needs or feelings. Exploitation, taking advantage of others for personal gain such as money, status, or attention. Lack of empathy, being unable or unwilling to recognize or care about the emotions, perspectives, or rights of others. Envy, feeling resentful or jealous of others who have something they want or think they deserve, such as wealth, beauty, or success. Arrogance, behaving in a haughty, rude, or contemptuous manner towards others, especially those they view as inferior or unworthy. Denial, refusing to acknowledge or accept their flaws, mistakes, or weaknesses. Projection, attributing their own negative traits, feelings, or motives to others, such as accusing others of being selfish, dishonest, or envious. Rationalization, making excuses or justifications for their actions or behaviors, such as blaming others, minimizing consequences, or claiming good intentions. Now, all of this research that I'm sharing with you is not so that you condemn people. No, not at all. But as a means to give you context and understanding. When you understand the origin of people who display narcissistic tendencies, when you understand the origin of their behaviors and thought patterns, you can be authentically compassionate without taking their actions and behaviors personally. All of a sudden now you're understanding, you're realizing, wow, this is what's happening. These are just defense mechanisms and protective. They're being protective of what really underneath they're feeling insecure. Maybe they grew up in a family where they were constantly being criticized. And these are just those protective measures that they have that are just, they're protecting that child within that is feeling insecure and feeling criticized and maybe was abused. So all of a sudden now you're coming from that place of understanding. Not that you have to take abuse. So as we continue on, let's talk about narcissistic limiting beliefs. All right, limiting beliefs are thoughts or states of mind that you think are the absolute truth and stop you from doing certain things. These beliefs can be about yourself, others, or the world. And they can prevent you from reaching your full potential, achieving your goals, or experiencing new opportunities. Limiting beliefs can also affect your emotions, such as causing anxiety, imposter syndrome, or even procrastination. Now, limiting beliefs can inform you as a coach, consultant, team leader, manager, and help you to understand people. When you come across a narcissistic identity that thinks, hey, I'm superior to everyone else, I deserve special treatment, I can't handle criticism, you can help this person by questioning these beliefs and providing evidence to the contrary. As a coach, you can help the narcissist develop a more realistic and balanced self-view and increase their empathy and compassion for others. We'll look at some of those questions as we continue on. Now, what are those top limiting beliefs that narcissists have? Well, that they're superior to others and that they deserve special treatment. A narcissist has that inflated sense of self-importance and entitlement, and they expect others to admire and validate them. The next limiting belief, that they are perfect and never make mistake. Now, this limiting belief is based on that fragile ego and the fear of being exposed as insecure or flawed. So you can help them by giving them positive reinforcement, yes, and creating a vision of, hey, what if you do make a mistake? What does that say about you? Does that really impact your self-esteem? Or can you use this in a way that's going to motivate you to make some changes? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're flawed. Remember, the research that shows that narcissism develops because of the parenting style and the fact that maybe there was abuse and maybe there was constant criticism. So that self-esteem that was developed, it's just they can't be insecure or flawed. They avoid introspection and accountability or deny or hide their mistakes. And that's where, as the coach, consultant, team lead, manager, you can guide them in a way that, hey, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. But in a narcissist's mind, it is not okay to make a mistake. A mistake gets them into trouble. Remember, they're still living from that place of being similar to a child. They are independent and self-sufficient. Remember, narcissists have difficulties in forming genuine and reciprocal relationships with others. They lack empathy and compassion, and they see others as objects or tools to serve their needs. All of these limiting beliefs can cause narcissists to behave in destructive and harmful ways, such as disrespecting, manipulating, exploiting, or humiliating others. So now that you understand some of those limiting beliefs, how do you coach a narcissist? Well, let's look at some of the ways that you can coach a narcissist and some of the questions that you can use. Now, coaching a narcissist can be challenging, especially you're shaking your head. Yes, Louise, I've tried many times and it hasn't worked, but I'm here to tell you that it's not impossible. And when you're coaching a narcissist, you think about some of their underlying character traits and the way that they developed. You can just let them take control of the meeting with you acting as a guide. So the guiding questions are really there to keep them focused and then just allow them to talk and guide them in a way so that you can help them to become more self-aware. You can help them to determine their personal needs and personal goals and find ways to align them with team success if you are a manager or a team lead. Take care to track and acknowledge their personal successes always, because remember, they need that. They need that self-assurance because deep down inside they feel insecure. Remember to always be non-judgmental, almost to the extreme. Use positive reinforcement. Keep them out of situations where they're going to be tempted to humiliate others, to humiliate you. Never take abuse from a narcissist, but do it in a way so that you do not show that you are being attacked and you come off defensive, because if you do that, then you are just giving them reason to continue that behavior. And always minimizing your exposure and theirs to negative feedback, not getting into that negative feedback loop, and then leveraging mentoring techniques tailored to their personalities. Remember, going back to the research that I've shared with you, because that gives you a lot of insight. And then evaluate and correct the impact of narcissism on the team culture. Remember, getting them into that mindset of they are a part of the team. They are not the entire team. So keeping in mind that narcissists will do anything to avoid criticism or take responsibility for their mistakes. So you need to motivate them by creating a vision of what they could be and help them see how their behavior affects others. You also need to protect yourself and the entire team, if you're a team leader manager, from the potential harm that a narcissist can cause, such as undermining, sabotaging, or exploiting others. But I share that just as a means for you to understand that coaching is important. Coaching is the way. Because when you're coaching a narcissist, it does require understanding, skill, and non-judgment. Remember, everything I've shared with you is not to judge and not to put them into a box. Like, this is who they are. This is who they're always going to be. No, it's just because a narcissist has not developed other ways to get their needs met. Remember, they've got a lot of unmet needs, but no one has ever given them a more healthy way to approach self-growth, self-improvement, personal growth, professional growth, and that's where you come in. So it's always about understanding and thinking about when you take the time to do this and guide them to make positive change, it is very much worth it. It is such a great feeling for you. All right, so let's talk about 5 coaching questions that you can use to help a narcissist grow and improve. The first question: what are some of the strengths and skills that you are proud of, and how have you used them to collaborate and contribute? Remember, getting them focused on the fact that it's not all about them. They have to collaborate and contribute. All right, the second question: how do you cope with feedback and criticism? It's about helping them, this question, helping them to become aware of some of their defense mechanisms. And then as they are answering this question, providing them with that guidance to develop better techniques so that they're not always coming across and people aren't always labeling them as the narcissist. Because remember, they are in your office. If you're a coach or even a consultant or team leader, manager, they're in your office because people are complaining about them. Hey, they're a narcissist. So you want them to understand that there are healthier ways to get their needs met. All right, the third question: how can you use feedback and criticism to support your personal and professional growth? Very important for them to see feedback and even criticism as a way to move forward. All right, fourth question: how do you express your emotions and needs in healthy and respectful ways? There's a key word there, and that's respect. And sometimes people, not just narcissists, but all people, don't understand what that word respect is. Now, in our next podcast, episode 2, we're going to talk about that at great length. So you do not want to miss that, because it's important to understand. It's important to understand how to coach people toward that. All right, the fifth question: how do you listen and respond to the emotions and needs of others? And for a narcissist, this might be completely new to them. How do I listen? Well, I don't listen. And they might be aware, well, no, actually, when people are talking, I'm just thinking about myself, and I'm thinking about how they can help me to get my needs and unmet emotions, how I can get those met. So this turns the tables around for them and helps you to get them into a space where they're not the center of attention. They are part of a team. And whether that team is a work team, a family team, or in another relationship with another person, that kind of a team. So these 5 questions are powerful when put into action. And I want you to keep listening, because I'll let you know where you can download 5 more specific and powerful questions that will help you to coach a narcissist. Well, that's a wrap for this podcast. Hopefully you've been sharing your experience in the comments section. I want to hear from you. You bring with you so much valuable insight. And if this podcast, what you've been listening to, if it resonated with you, make sure you give it a thumbs up as well. Share with people who can benefit from it. If you are not a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so you're notified when the next podcast drops. I am your podcast host, Louise and Maurice, and I appreciate that you've spent your valuable time with me. As promised, I'm going to share with you where you can find the valuable PDF document with the rest of the coaching questions on it. You want to go to my website, louiseandmaurice.com, and you want to click on free or hover your mouse over free, and you see all of these resources that I have for you: free coaching training, coaching questions, empowered mindset. The last one, What Should I Do?, which was the Empowered Prevention series, and now Coaching Podcast. You want to click on Coaching Podcast, and that will take you to the free resources associated with season 1 of the Coaching Podcast.